Are you afraid of death? A holiday of remembrance and hope is approaching. Memorial Day in the US. And in China, there's a holiday commemorating death, Qingming Festival. But they are completely different. Imagine being told from childhood that even talking about death can bring bad luck. Now imagine a country where people actively honor and celebrate the dead every year. It sounds like two opposite worlds, right? So, do Chinese people fear death more than others? In this video, we're diving into Memorial Day's patriotic tributes and Qingming Festival's tomb-sweeping sorrow to uncover the truth. Watch this video till the end, and you'll discover the greatest perspective on death in the world. So transformative that you'll never fear it again. In the US, Memorial Day weekend has a split personality. On one hand, it's a solemn day of remembrance for fallen soldiers. On the other, it's the unofficial start of summer, complete with backyard BBQs, beach trips, family picnics, parades, and even fireworks lighting up the sky. Originally established to honor fallen soldiers, Memorial Day now finds Americans grilling hot dogs and hamburgers, enjoying a day that mixes remembrance with a festive spirit. It's a curious mix of somber and celebratory, honoring heroes in the morning, then cannonballing into the pool by afternoon. Now flip to China's Qingming Festival, also known as Tomb Sweeping Day. Celebrated in early spring, this day is dedicated to honoring ancestors and remembering the departed. On Qingming, families visit ancestral graves to clean the tombs, pull weeds, and express their respect. Imagine it as a heartfelt family reunion, except the relatives in attendance are, well, no longer living. People burn incense, joss paper, ghost money, and even offer the deceased's favorite foods as tribute, literally setting fake money on fire so that their ancestors can live more comfortably in the other world. Yes, you heard that right. In Chinese culture, death isn't seen as a total disappearance, but rather as a transition to another realm where our loved ones continue to exist. So, what exactly causes such a stark contrast between how Chinese and Americans treat the departed? Let me hit you with the core truth. Chinese and American approaches to problems, and especially to death, are completely different. There's no doubt that death is a big issue for both cultures, but how do they solve it? In the US, people choose to face the problem head-on, whereas in China, people tend to avoid addressing it directly. In Western culture, especially in America, death is seen as a one-time event. Someone passes away, a funeral is held, and then life goes on. In fact, Americans often cope with death by making jokes about it. You've probably heard the classic dark humor, "Nothing's certain but death and taxes," or seen college students during finals week laughing about the sweet embrace of death. This sweet embrace of death has even become a meme in American internet culture, a phenomenon that contrasts sharply with Chinese online humor. In the coming weeks, I might even dedicate an entire video to exploring the secrets behind the differences in meme culture between the US and China. So if you're interested, drop a comment below. Besides, you might also hear Americans quip, "If I get hit by a bus tomorrow, delete my browser history." And everyone just laughs. The underlying attitude is clear. Death is real, but we don't have to invite it to dinner. When it comes, we'll face it, and maybe crack a few jokes along the way. In Chinese culture, people often refuse to believe that death is a final end. They comfort themselves with the notion that your loved ones have merely changed address, so to speak, and that you still maintain a bond with them. This belief comes from deep-rooted Confucian traditions of ancestor veneration and the emphasis on filial piety. Confucius himself dodged questions about the afterlife. Your ancestors may no longer be physically present, but they are never far from your heart. It's widely held that they continue to watch over the living and that the living have a duty to honor and care for them in a spiritual way. At the same time, everyday life in China is marked by an extreme caution, or even superstition, when it comes to discussing death openly. Simply mentioning death is thought to invite bad luck. In fact, the word death itself is so taboo that even the number 4 is shunned. Because 4, see, sounds like death, sai, in Chinese. You must have heard this in the Japan-based JoJo series, which is deeply influenced by Chinese culture. Few people will write their own wills or talk about end-of-life plans. for fear that doing so might curse themselves. In everyday conversations, apart from during Qingming or formal funeral rituals, families tiptoe around the topic. Even children are often kept from knowing the full extent of a gravely ill parent's condition, as acknowledging it is seen as too cruel or inauspicious. And in a sense, it is a kind of fear or deep respect. The line is blurry. All right, now for the big reveal. So, Americans confront death head-on, while Chinese tend to avoid directly addressing it. Does that mean Chinese fear death more? Is that really the case? I'm not so sure. Aren't Americans essentially numbing their fear of death by turning it into entertainment, while the Chinese, by commemorating death in such a solemn and formal way, are truly confronting it? Perhaps Americans, by turning solemn remembrances into festive, even commercialized events like Memorial Day and Halloween, are actually numbing themselves to their fear of death. After all, look at the way Memorial Day has morphed into a day of backyard barbecues and sales, or how Halloween has become a carnival of costumes and candy, all of which might serve as distractions from the inevitable. On the other hand, by commemorating death in such a serious and formal manner, aren't the Chinese actually facing mortality head-on? For thousands of years, Confucian thought has influenced how death is perceived in China. Confucius himself famously avoided detailed talk about the afterlife. As captured in the saying, Wei Zhisheng, Yan Zixi, how can one know death when life is unknown? Yet he stressed that by practicing moral virtues in this life, one can transcend death. He even said, Zhao Wendao, Qi Si Ke Yi. If you hear the way in the morning, you can die happily in the evening, meaning that the pursuit of truth and virtue can render the fear of death irrelevant. So, it's not a matter of who is better or worse at handling death. It's about the depth and history of how each culture has grappled with this profound mystery. The Chinese have been reflecting on and debating the nature of mortality for thousands of years, while Americans have only been doing so for a few hundred. Let's be honest, everyone fears death in their own way. The way Chinese and Americans approach death is different, and even contradictory. So, what is the right perspective on life and death? The only true meaning of death is to remind us to live well and cherish every moment we have. Think about it. On Memorial Day, Americans choose to joyfully embrace the present, while in China, families honor their ancestors so as not to disappoint them, using these rituals as a reminder to take care of their lives and loved ones. As the saying goes, life is too short not to live it fully. This, my friends, is the greatest insight about death that I want to share with you. Live in the moment. To sum up today's video, we first explored the traditions of American Memorial Day and Chinese Qingming Festival. We then examined the contrasting attitudes of the two cultures towards death, and finally, we reflected on what these diverse traditions can teach us about truly living. Next episode, we'll dive into the lives of the greatest poets from China and America, a discussion that will completely overturn your preconceptions. If you want to learn more about the fascinating cultural differences between China and the US, please like, subscribe, and leave your comments below. Thank you for watching.